In 2019, Steven Strasberg was on top of the world. He had a great regular season where he made 33 starts, won 18 games, and over 200 innings, but he wasn't done. The Nationals squeaked into the postseason that year, and Strasberg took it from there, throwing 36 and a third innings with a 1.98 ERA, struck out 48 hitters with a 5-0 record, going 2-0 in the World Series against a dominant Houston Astros team, and propelling the Nationals to a World Series championship with Strasberg getting the World Series MVP honors. He was a Washington, D.C. hero. With 4 years left on his current contract, however, Strasberg saw the chance to get even more money, deservingly so, and used his current opt-out, becoming a free agent for the first time in his career. The Nationals had two big free agents coming off of that championship: Anthony Rendon, the third-place vote for the NL MVP, or Steven Strasberg. Who do you choose? Well, the Nats decided to go with the World Series MVP, signing him to the exact same deal that Rendon got with the Angels at $245 million for 7 years. Was this maybe a bit of an emotional or reactionary move on the Nats' end? Sure, maybe a little bit, but at the time, coming off of a World Series MVP and an overall great 2019 season, it seemed like the right move to make. Skip ahead to now, and this is currently the worst pitching contract in baseball, maybe even the worst contract in general. In 2009, Steven Strasberg, like his future teammate Bryce Harper, had incredibly high expectations and was expected to be amazing, translating to a number 1 overall selection in the 2009 draft by the Washington Nationals, getting a record-breaking over $15 million for 4 years a couple months later. The very next year, almost exactly 1 year after he was drafted to the date, Steven Strasberg made his MLB debut, and it was electric. A Sports Illustrated columnist called it the most hype pitching debut the game has ever seen. An ESPN article referred to the big day as Strasmus, and the biggest part was the crowd. The 2010 Nationals finished with less than 70 wins and in last place. Yet when the day came for Stras's debut, Nats Park was packed to the brim, and the man himself delivered. He'd throw 7 innings, give up 2 runs, walk nobody, and struck out 14, all in his first ever start. It definitely was a sign for things to come, but so was the month of July, when Strasberg had to go on the injured list with an inflamed right shoulder. He'd come back in August, only to get removed from his third start back with another injury, and just 6 days later, it was revealed that Steven Strasberg had to go under the knife for Tommy John surgery. After throwing a few innings in 2011, Strasberg would have a strict innings limit in 2012, being shut down before season's end and not being able to pitch in the postseason. In June of 2013, he'd have a quick stint on the injured list, but that was really it, as he did end up throwing over 180 innings. As for 2014, Strasberg was a horse, throwing 215 innings with a 3.14 ERA, striking out 242 hitters, which was the most in the National League. As good as he was in 2015, winning 11 games with a 3.46 ERA, Strasberg was limited to under 130 innings because of injuries. Despite the numerous injuries, the Nationals still decided to give him a 7-year, $175 million deal, and it was actually a really good move and one that worked wonders for them. But 2016 prevented him from pitching as much as he probably wanted, under 150, getting placed on the injured list on August 22nd due to a sore elbow, and that was pretty much it for him that year. 2017 featured a second straight All-Star appearance for Steven Strasberg, as he threw over 175 innings with a 2.52 ERA, finishing 3rd in the NL Cy Young voting. 2018 was another year of a smaller amount of innings pitched for Strasberg, as he'd make just 22 starts and throw exactly 130. But then 2019 arrived. As I mentioned in the very beginning of this video, as 2019 ended, Steven Strasberg was on top of the world. He was the man, and all of those expectations years ago before he even made his MLB debut finally fully came to fruition, as he did everything he possibly could and won them a World Series title. Without Strasberg, it's hard to see the Nationals winning it all that year. A ton of people contributed to that championship, of course, but Stras was the guy there at the end for the rotation and really the entire pitching staff, pitching into the 9th inning in a winner-go-home Game 6 for the Nationals in Houston. It was impressive to see, and he deserved every bit of love he got. But as for the money and years, I don't know about that kind of love. As I've been going through the first decade of Steven Strasberg's career, if you haven't noticed, the only negative thing about this guy that I've mentioned are his injuries. And that's just about all you can critique about him. He's never had a bad season, or a bad full season I should say, pitching to a sub-4 ERA in every single one. With that being said, injuries aren't a small thing, especially with Steven Strasberg. Let's be real here. Not to be mean, but Steven Strasberg is made of paper. He's always been someone you're holding your breath for to stay healthy, and with each passing start is a blessing. He's incredibly talented, the numbers show that, and we all know that, but he's always been a liability with the injuries. Take that same guy with all those injuries over the last decade, and now look at him as a guy who's on the wrong side of 30. Sure, pitchers can stay healthy through their 30s, look at Justin Verlander. But Justin Verlander has never had many injury scares in his career, not nearly as many as Strasburg. So even with Strasburg's thick history of injury-less stints, the Nationals decided to sign him to another 7 years worth more money. Like I said, at the time, sure. Part of the reason general manager Mike Rizzo and the Nats front office gave him that contract was sort of like a, hey, Strauss, you've been with us your entire career, you've been great your whole time here, and you just delivered one of the better postseason pitching performances we've ever seen en route to a championship. Here's a boatload of money. Doing so in hopes he'd stay healthy, but in reality, that was all they had for Strasburg to stay healthy. Hope. There was no definitive sign that he'd stay away from any arm issues, and it's coming back to bite the Nationals right about now. In 2020, Steven Strasberg made only 2 starts and threw only 5 innings after starting the year hurt and coming back only to go back on the injured list due to a nerve issue in his pitching hand. 2020 was also a lost year, who cares, but Strasberg has only since gotten worse. He'd make 2 starts in 2021 before going on the IL with inflammation in his right shoulder, came back and made 3 more starts only to go on the IL again in June with a neck strain, going on to get surgery to fix his thoracic outlet syndrome relating to the nerve issue, and that was it for 2021. Just 5 starts overall with a 4.57 ERA and 21 1/3 innings. As for 2022, it's been even worse than ever. He hadn't pitched all year until more recently, finally coming back in a start against the Marlins in June, giving up 7 runs on 8 hits, one of which was a home run, while walking 2 and hitting a batter in less than 5 innings. Well, Strasburg is now back to being shelved on the injured list, this time it being a stress reaction in the 2nd and 3rd ribs on the right side of his body, apparently in relation to the surgery he got last summer. And as of right now, the Nationals don't really have any answers. This video isn't anything against Steven Strasberg, because this guy's been through a lot in his career. But injuries galore, and now ever since he got that $245 million from the Nationals, he's thrown just 31 1/3 innings in 3 years. The Washington Nationals World Series hangover isn't a World Series hangover anymore, it's just a dumpster fire. They've been one of the worst teams in all of baseball since the start of 2020, and there hasn't been too much outside of Juan Soto to be excited about. It's been real tough for Strasburg over the last 3 years, and you gotta feel for the guy. Sure, he's still making a ton of money each year, but to cash in that $35 million check from the Nationals each year when he hasn't done anything to earn that money can't feel very good. He deserves better, no doubt, but his contract looks real bad right now. It's not even that Strasburg is pitching and has been bad. That wouldn't be a good scenario either, of course, but he's not even able to take the mound, and really hasn't at all for the first 3 years of his contract. In a picture-perfect world, Steven Strasberg will come back strong and throw 200 innings every season starting in 2023. But considering the history with him, that probably just won't happen, as this has easily become the worst contract for a pitcher in baseball right now.